Hi witchlings, welcome back to my channel. It is me, your chaotic witch aunt, and I am here talking about one of probably the most requested videos that I have received, and that is shadow work. Woo! So this is going to be kind of a what is shadow work and 10 best shadow work prompts or resources for you guys for beginners, intermediate, etc. But before we get into that, I do want to give a shout out to one of my friends, Jim Two Snakes. He is on TikTok under that name, and he has a Patreon where he offers 3 tiers and kind of like a mentorship teaching experience. And I know a lot of you guys ask me to mentor you or teach you. He's a wonderful person and I love him very much, and he deserves so much hype. So if you're looking for a community, if you're looking for mentorship, if you're looking for someone who is more spiritually advanced or more advanced of a practitioner than you to kind of give you some guidance and help you along your path, I definitely recommend Jim Two Snakes. It's affordable. He's a wonderful human. He has my seal of approval, and I am linking his Patreon right under mine, actually probably right above mine, down below. Please check him out. Please go give him a like, a follow on TikTok, and give him your time of day. I love him. But yeah, today we are going to be talking about shadow work. I feel like this is a topic that is not only very highly talked about and sought after, but is talked about in kind of the wrong way. You'll see a lot of people on the internet telling people to go do their shadow work, that I have some shadow work to work through. And it's not that simple. It's not that easy. It is not that simple. If you wouldn't tell a stranger to go to therapy, you shouldn't be telling a stranger to go do their shadow work. Unless you're doing it kind of in a joking way, which I do a lot. I'm like, oh, what about your shadow work? Da da da. And unless someone's paying you for assistance, which I talk with my clients about this stuff. But it's kind of being thrown around as a very kind of, I guess, hot button term, in my opinion. I think it is just tossed all over, when in reality it's not that simple to start shadow work, and it's, you know, a very psychological, in-depth topic, especially if we're talking about working through trauma. So let's start talking about, and I'm gonna grab my little computer. I think the biggest question I get is, what is shadow work? How do I start it? In essence, shadow work is developed from a Jungian psychology, and let's note that Carl Jung drew a lot of influences from Eastern esoteric thought and philosophy. But the idea is that shadow work is working with the shadow self, which is the darkest parts of ourself that we have repressed and rejected, and we try to work to accept and heal them. It's relatively a new hot button topic. I don't think you'll see a lot of people talking about it 5-10 years ago, and that is mostly because it was a pushback, in my opinion. It was a pushback against the kind of love and light type spirituality. So a spirituality that only focuses on the positives, a spirituality that only really works with the light aspects of self. Shadow work came in as a idea that working with our demons is powerful. And so let me just say that shadow work was not developed in response to love and light spirituality. It started gaining traction in the mainstream as response to love and light spirituality. So if you go back 5-10 years, you probably won't see a lot of discussions on shadow work prompts. I think the oldest one I have is 2016. It's 4 years ago. And this is from Kelly Ann Maddox, which I actually list as one of my resources, 25 heavy-duty shadow work prompts. That is the oldest thing I can find on shadow work, apart from, like, psychology stuff. But, like, you will see the Pinterest things where it's, like, 25 or 35 shadow work prompts. Here are a few things. Okay, so people are like, well, how do I start shadow work? What do I do? I recommend therapy to start shadow work. And please note, I am aware that therapy is really hard to access in America and not everyone can afford it. I think that there are a few affordable options in therapy that, you look in master's programs near you, because they usually will do it for free, or like not a lot. You look for sliding scale therapists. You can do BetterHelp, which is online, and stuff like that. However, it is to say that therapy is a privilege. So the way I say it is, shadow work can be done next to therapy, as part of therapy. And it just should not be a replacement for therapy. So if you're sitting here and you're like, oh, I can't do shadow work because I can't afford therapy, you can. You just shouldn't do shadow work instead of therapy. If you're thinking, I can't afford therapy, I'm going to do shadow work instead, that's not a great mindset, because shadow work is at its core a psychological concept and should be done with the help of a licensed professional, especially if you are doing trauma work. If you have any form of trauma and you think hopping into shadow work by yourself is a good idea, it's not. It is very dark and it is very terrifying, and I do not recommend you do that. And that is only because working through your trauma by yourself is incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult. Shadow work, I think, has been marketed as this very light, shallow thing, when a lot of times shadow work is the really deep and dark stuff. It is the stuff we really don't like about ourselves. And that includes trauma, that includes insecurities, that includes mental health issues. When we look at shadow work through the lens of really getting down into it, we have to look at it through the lens of we do need assistance from others for shadow work. It's not to say that without therapy you can't do shadow work at all. I just, like I said, wouldn't recommend starting to break down trauma through shadow work without the help of a licensed medical professional. Second biggest resource is Carl Jung's works. If you want to understand what shadow work is, read his stuff, because he invented it. He created these ideas of the shadow self, and he's the one that is you're going to be able to understand kind of what it is from there. I also recommend the Witch of Wanderlust's Wanderlust's video on shadow work. It has a lot of traction. She breaks it down wonderfully. Olivia's a good friend of mine. I love her, and I do think that she is a reliable source. So, needless to say, we look at what is shadow work. It's, in essence, looking at our demons and saying, I can work with you. I've always seen shadow work, and this is my personal opinion, I have always seen shadow work as a less of a fix-it mentality and more of a accept it and see what we can do from there mentality. I don't see shadow work going into it and saying, I need to fix this. I need to remove it. I need to get rid of it. I see it as, let's accept it. Let's see how we feel with it. Let's bring it back into ourselves, bring it up. And I don't think healing and fixing are in the same mindset. I think I had a lot of experiences in therapy when I was younger where we were like, well, what can we do to fix this? I don't think that my mental health needs to be fixed. I think it needs to be acknowledged. I think it needs to be brought up to the forefront and worked through, especially my past traumas, but I don't think that there are parts of me that are broken. And that in part, that idea of what we believe are broken or bad parts of ourselves is what we repress. That becomes part of the shadow self. Parts that we don't like, parts that we feel other people won't like, we push down and it simmers and then it bubbles over in worst possible ways. So if you aren't dealing with your shadow work or your shadow self, you may notice that you are more reactive. You treat people not the best. You treat yourself not the best. And those are just examples. But like I said, I think shadow work has become a little bit of a buzzword where people are like, oh, you just haven't done your shadow work. So as for resources, if you are looking to start shadow work or for some shadow work prompts for journaling, Kelly Ann Maddox, which I will link down below, has some fantastic heavy-duty shadow work prompts. Please note, these are really intense. You don't have to start shadow work by watching this video. If you just want to watch this video and learn about it, fantastic. I love that for you. Just 3 prompts that I liked from Kelly Ann Maddox's website. What does it feel like to have your emotions belittled or downplayed? Be as descriptive as possible and try writing about specific examples from your own life too. Ouch. How judged do you tend to feel on a daily basis? Explore how much of that perceived judgment is real and how much is imagined. Ow, that's what I'm going to need to do. And if it makes you uncomfortable, if hearing these you're like, oh, I don't like that, that's the point. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable. It is supposed to bring up things that you don't like, that you feel are icky, and force you to look at them. Which emotion do you tend to deal with in unhelpful or destructive ways? Write about the way you usually deal with this troublesome emotion. Then write about what your life might be like if you dealt with it differently. What does the word punishment make you think of right now and why? I added on to that. How are you punishing yourself right now? So the way I describe shadow work in my own practice is I do a lot of reaction-based shadow work. When I have a very strong emotional reaction to something, or something really affects me, I will stop and I will ask myself the following questions. What was the primary emotion your reaction was based in? And what I mean by primary emotion or primary reaction is anger, sadness, fear, anxiety. Those are the 4 that I see as primary emotion. You can also add happiness in there. All emotions to some extent come from there. Frustration leads into anger, hurt leads into anger, sadness. And I think that at least for me, most of my emotional reactions come from those 5 reactions of like, I'm either angry, I'm sad, I'm fearful, or I'm in some way. And then what was it about the situation that led to this reaction and feeling in you? Example, did you feel invalidated by the other person? Did you feel targeted? Did you feel like they weren't listening to you? It's important to look at the situation and see, okay, why did this reaction happen? What did they do or that caused this in me? And then, do you feel that by shifting the attention to the other person's insecurities or flaws, you are able to successfully avoid something uncomfortable about yourself? Yeah, so then you look at the situation and say, all right, did you instead start pointing out stuff about them? Did you start looking at them and saying, oh, well, you did this and this and this, and did it make it easier for you to avoid your own stuff? Does the source of this reaction mirror something negative in the past you have experienced? Does it open old wounds, fears, or anxieties? Past wounds usually present in emotionally reactive ways, especially if they're unhealed. What is the part of this reaction or situation that is most uncomfortable for you, and why? And then, how can you hold space for these reactions and emotions in order to further understand them and heal them? I do these whenever I have a very strong emotion to something. If something on the internet really gets me upset, if something, I don't know, that someone did really makes me upset, anything along those lines, I do these questions and I really break down the emotions. And now I want to say that I have been doing this for many years. I was put into therapy at 16. So doing like cognitive behavioral therapy and analyzing my reactions and my feelings is second nature to me. It's not going to be second nature to everyone, and that's okay. With shadow work, the goal is not only to heal past wounds, but self-awareness. Being aware of emotions that you have that affect others, or the ways that certain things that you do affect others, is really important. Being able to understand why your reactions and emotions happen, why you have certain traits or behaviors, where did they come from? It's like following a tree all the way down to the root and picking apart and healing the roots and making sure the roots are okay. If there's root rot, but you notice the symptoms, but you're not looking at the roots, you won't be able to heal the problem. A few other prompts that I really enjoy are as follows. This is one that I like using of myself. Why do you take everything personally? Why do you feel like something that someone else did is about you? Where's your emotional reactivity coming from? This is another one that you can add on to reaction-based shadow work. So when you have emotional reactivity, you can go through, look at the primary emotion, the situation, what part of the situation caused this reaction in you, where does it come from? And this is the same kind of question of looking at the roots. Where did this reactivity come from? Why is it there? Reflect on a situation where you should have set boundaries. Why didn't you set them? And an add-on to this is, why does setting boundaries make you feel guilty? For all my other people pleasers out there, I see you. I love you. You're here. Reflect on a situation you could have handled better, and how could you have handled it better? These are just some basic shadow work prompts, and they are pretty intense, but to me, I think that some shadow work prompts are, more like first level of shadow self, and then we get down to the deep dark stuff. I'm more deep dark oriented. Some other ones that I've seen that I really enjoy are like, what would you tell your child self or your inner child if you got the chance? Another thing that we do, or what I see as part of shadow work, is inner child healing. And this is, in my opinion, this is my own method, so this is something I developed by myself. When we look at the inner child, we see a child version of ourselves, And when that child version of ourselves has found lack in their childhood. So if you didn't get something in childhood, let's say you didn't get enough room to be yourself, you didn't get enough room to be emotional, you felt like you weren't allowed to express yourself, you felt like there wasn't room for creativity, you didn't get enough validation or attention or anything like that, my version of healing is you start giving that to yourself now as part of healing that inner child, because that inner child is still you still have that in there. In order to bring it out and heal the inner child, we need to start nurturing ourselves in the way that the inner child was not nurtured. Whatever you felt you were lacking in childhood, begin giving it to yourself. This to me is a part of self-love work and shadow work. And the other thing with shadow work is you need to split that time between shadow work and taking care of yourself. Allow yourself to take breaks. Allow yourself to walk away from things if it's getting you really upset. You can sit in those feelings instead of analyzing them. Allow yourself to feel your emotions before you start picking them apart. If I get angry about something, I legit will sit there and be like, I am angry. I'm very angry. And then I'll write about it. I try not to dismiss and overanalyze my emotions right away. I let myself sit in them and stew in them and mull through them and express my feelings to the people around me or write it down. And then I will go back and go through it and see what happened. You can't analyze and do shadow work if you're in emotional or survival mode, which is why I say that not everyone has the ability to start shadow work right away. If you are in a situation where you are consistently in a state of emotional reactivity, you're consistently in survival mode, you are consistently protecting yourself, it's going to be more difficult for you to do shadow work around that situation because it's right there. So telling someone that they should just do shadow work on the internet for whatever reason, or they need to do shadow work, isn't always the best approach because you have no idea what's going on in that person's life. They could be in a situation where they have to protect themselves and their emotions all the time. They don't have room for vulnerability, therefore they don't have room to analyze their emotions because they are continuously receiving being in like an emotionally reactive state. And I think that's something that a lot of us in the spiritual community forget, is that we are all coming from different backgrounds and different places, and not everyone has the privilege of just diving into trauma work like off the bat. Some people are working through things at different paces, and you may still notice some of those weird emotional responses from trauma in them. It doesn't mean you have to sit there and deal with things if they are like continuing the cycle and being, abusive towards you. You shouldn't. But telling someone that they need to do shadow work when maybe they don't have the ability to see a therapist to work through their trauma, or they're in a survival mode, doesn't really do anything. It's virtue signaling. Telling someone to do shadow work without explaining to them why what they're doing is hurting you, or what they're doing is upsetting you, or without doing your own shadow work to understand why you feel the need to say that to them, is purposeless. So instead of on the internet saying that someone needs to do their shadow work when they do something that upsets you, ask yourself, why did this upset me? Why do I feel the need to tell them to do that? Break your own feelings down and then decide whether you want to approach a conversation with them in a respectful manner and talk about why what they did hurt you and why they feel like they need to do that, or walk away. But anyways, shadow work is a very, extensive topic, and this only brushes over small parts of it. This is my experience and my opinion of shadow work. Every single practitioner is going to have a different experience and different opinion. It's okay if you disagree with some of the things I've said here. That's perfectly fine. I am not the all knowledgeable Frankie. I encourage a learning environment. If you have good prompts with shadow work that you've enjoyed writing about or journaling about, pop them in the chat, pop them in the comments. I want to see them. I'll heart them. We'll have a nice little cry. We'll cry over things. And that is really all I have for today. If you would like to see more videos on shadow work, please let me know. I'm tagging Witch of Wanderlust's video, Jim's Patreon, and Kellyanne Maddox's shadow work prompts below for your enjoyment. If you stayed through this whole video, thank you so much. If you didn't, that's okay too. You can leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn the bell on if you want, but no pressure. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.